Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Racha Kodash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of Ecclesiasticus, the 47th chapter. And after him, that is after Samuel, right? That's where the 46th chapter ended. Nathan, or after him, rose up Nathan to prophesy in the time of David, as in the fat taken away from the peace offering, so was David chosen out of the children of Israel. And the fat taken away, the fat was a portion that was offered to the Lord. Okay, so likewise, David was separated out, okay, and chosen of the Lord, i.e., he was a man of the Lord's heart, or man after the Lord's heart. He played with lions as with kids, and with bears as with lambs. This is showing the fierceness of David, that he was able to take on and slay lions and bears like they were, goats and lambs. Slew he not a giant, dealing with Goliath, when he was yet but a youth, all right, or yet but young? So David in his youth slew a giant. And did he not take away reproach from the people when he lifted up his hand with the stone in the sling and beat down the boasting of Goliath? And he did take down the reproach because, Israel was afraid, right? They were all afraid to go against Goliath. And Goliath was just coming out there day after day after day, talking smack, all kinds of smack. Verse 5, it says here, he called upon the Most High Lord, and he gave him strength in his right hand to slay the mighty warrior and set up the horn of his people, okay, which that horn signifies their power. It says, so the people honored him with 10,000s and praised him in the blessings of the Lord, in that he gave him a crown of glory. Right, that's what the Lord did. He gave him a good rep, and he gave him a crown of glory through that victory he had gotten. For he destroyed the enemies on every side, and brought to naught the Philistines, his adversaries, and brake their horn in sunder unto this day. Right, he broke their power and subjected them unto us. In all his works he praised the Holy One, Most High, with the words of glory. With his whole heart, he sung songs, right? Go and read the Psalms. You'll see them in there. And loved him that made him. And you understand this when you read the Psalms. He set singers also before the altar, that by their voices they might make sweet melody, and daily sing praises in their songs. Yes, and you read that David did set up, singers, right? And psalmists, you could say. It says here, he beautified their feasts and set in order these solemn times until the end, that they might praise his holy name, and that the temple might sound from morning. Now let's read this here. This is chapter 47, verse 10. Let's read this in the GNTD. Okay, it says here, he set the times of the festivals throughout the year and made them splendid occasions. The temple rang with the Lord's praises all day long. And that was something that was also pleasant to the Lord. See, verse 10. I think we just read verse 10, actually. Yeah. Verse 11. Yeah, verse 11, it says here, the Lord took away his sins and exalted. Yeah, because he did commit some pretty grievous sins. But the Lord had mercy, right, and blotted it out. And exalted his horn forever. He gave him a covenant of kings and a throne of glory in Israel, right? And that covenant was the establishment of the throne of David. After him rose up a wise son, dealing with Solomon, and for his sake he dwelt at large. Solomon reigned in a peaceable time and was honored. For God made all quiet round about him, meaning all the other nations round about were subject to us, and they were all, they weren't. It wasn't tumultuous at that time. The Lord set it up that way. Okay, it says here round about him that he might build an house, in his name, and prepare his sanctuary forever. So the Lord gave him peace. so he can fulfill and finish, right? As David had already set up the stuff he needed, but he can actually build the temple of the Lord. How wise wast thou in thy youth, and as a flood filled with understanding. Thy soul covered the whole earth, and thou fillest it with dark parables. Okay, meaning, basically, you fill us what? Fill us the earth with dark parables, right? Or wise sayings. And this is dealing once again with Solomon. Thy name went far unto the islands, and for thy peace thou was beloved. And let's go real quick to the book. I believe it's First Kings, the 4th chapter. Whoa. Yeah, let's go down to the last verse. Yeah, 1 Kings 4:34 says, and there came of all people to hear the wisdom of Solomon from all kings of the earth, which had heard of his wisdom. Okay, so going back to Sirach chapter 47, right, verse 16, thy name went far unto the islands, and for thy peace thou was beloved. Right, because he was he wasn't like a man of war like his father was. Okay, David was more of the one, fighting the battles and the wars to really set up and prepare things for Solomon's time. The countries marveled at thee for thy songs. And it says here, the countries marveled at thee for thy songs and proverbs and parables and interpretations. By the name of the Lord God, which is called the Lord God of Israel, thou didst gather gold as tin, and didst multiply silver as lead. See, so basically you had an abundance. You had so much you were gathering gold and silver like common materials. Thou didst bow thy loins unto women, and this is more in his latter age, in his old age, when he went off. Right, you bowed your loins unto women, and by thy body thou was brought into subjection. You see, because they caused him to go astray in his old age. Verse 20, thou didst stain thine honor and pollute thy seed, so that thou broughtest wrath upon thy children and was grieved for their folly. Yeah, because of that idolatry. So the kingdom was divided, and out of Ephraim ruled a rebellious kingdom. But the Lord will never leave off his mercy, neither shall any of his works perish. Okay, so yeah, going back into our history, right? The kingdom was divided after Solomon's reign. You had a Rehoboam, which was his son, and Jeroboam, which became ruler over the northern kingdom. So that's the split that it's talking about here. It says here, verse 22, but the Lord will never cease off his mercy, neither shall any of his works perish, neither shall he abolish the posterity of his elect, and the seed of him that loveth him he will not take away. Yeah, so who ultimately are those that love the Lord, his elect? Okay, and as it says here, the seed of them the Lord is not going to take away. Wherefore he gave a remnant unto Jacob, and out of him a root unto David. See, so for the sake of preserving Israel, the Lord made sure, right, that there was always a remnant. I believe Isaiah said that, except the Lord had, left us a remnant, we should have been like unto Sodom and like unto Gomorrah. Thus rested Solomon with his fathers, that is, he died. And of his seed he left behind him Rehoboam, even the foolishness of the people, and one that had no understanding, that is, Rehoboam. He turned away the people through his counsel. There was also Jeroboam the son of Nebat. So the problem with Rehoboam was, instead of taking the counsel of the elders that were there with his father, he put that aside and took the counsel of the young men that he grew up with. What are they going to know? Anyway, as it says here, where are we at? Continuing in verse 23, it says, there was also Jeroboam the son of Nebat, who caused Israel to sin, and shoot Ephraim the way of sin. All right, and he calls them to sin by creating those idols, and then telling them, hey, you worship here instead of going to Jerusalem. And Ephraim represented the northern kingdom. And their sins were multiplied exceedingly, that they were driven out of the land. For they sought out all wickedness till the vengeance came upon them. Right, and that's when the Lord sent the Assyrians to come and remove them from the land. Okay, you can look that up. The siege of Samaria by the Assyrians. And that was the Lord bringing judgment, okay, once again on Israel, right, in that northern kingdom, because they were heavily into idolatry. And that brings us to the end of the book of Ecclesiasticus, the 47th chapter. Lord willing, that was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahushai, Bahasham, Rakha Kodash. And until next time, Shalom.